The stapler exists because paper stopped being rare. For most of human history, writing was expensive enough that permanence was assumed. If you recorded something, you expected it to last. Paper, parchment, and vellum were handled carefully, stored deliberately, and altered reluctantly. Documents were bound by intention, stitched, tied, sealed, or folded, because the act of joining them carried meaning. That world changed quietly, and then all at once. By the late 19th century, industrial paper production made sheets cheap, abundant, and temporary. Offices expanded, forms multiplied, copies proliferated. Paper stopped being a record and started becoming a process. And processes don't wait. Early offices solved the problem of keeping pages together the same way they always had. They used pins, clips, glue, thread, ribbon, and paste. Each solution worked mechanically, but failed behaviorally. Pins pricked fingers and fell out. Clips slipped and scattered under motion. Glue wrinkled pages and required drying time. Thread demanded holes, tools, and patience. The problem was not that paper couldn't be joined. It was that paper needed to be joined quickly, by anyone, without instruction, in the middle of other tasks. The stapler is the first solution that fully accepted how little attention people were willing to give the problem. Its defining feature is not the staple. Staples existed long before staplers. Bent wire, tacks, and fasteners were common. The innovation was not in the material, but in the choreography. The stapler made fastening a single downward motion, requiring no alignment beyond proximity, no preparation beyond presence. That motion is deliberate. Vertical force is the easiest force for the human body to apply while seated. Gravity helps. The arm and shoulder work together. You don't twist, pull, or aim. You press. This matters because offices are not places of focus. They are places of interruption. The stapler assumes you are distracted. It assumes you are mid-thought, mid-sentence, mid-decision. It assumes your attention is elsewhere and designs itself accordingly. Look closely at its form. The long top arm isn't aesthetic, it's leverage. The hinge placement isn't arbitrary. It sets the force curve so the staple penetrates paper before resistance spikes. The base isn't heavy for stability alone. Its mass absorbs recoil and prevents sliding, letting the user remain careless. Even the size of a standard staple is a compromise between opposing needs. Too thin, and it bends unpredictably. Too thick, and it tears paper or requires excessive force. The chosen gauge is just rigid enough to pierce several sheets and just soft enough to fold cleanly when it meets resistance. That folding is the real work. A staple does not clamp paper. It pierces and then yields. When the legs strike the anvil beneath, they are redirected inward or outward, depending on the design. This redirection is what creates holding power without crushing the fibers. The paper remains mostly intact. The bond is firm but not absolute. This is not an accident. Early fastening methods prized permanence. The stapler does not. It accepts that documents change. Pages are reordered. Mistakes happen. Attachments are temporary. This is why the staple bends instead of locking. The stapler is designed to fail gracefully. That sounds counterintuitive, but it is essential. A bond that cannot be undone discourages use. A bond that can be undone with mild damage encourages speed. The staple leaves marks, but not destruction. It signals that something was once joined without preventing it from being changed. Human behavior sits at the center of this decision. People do not want to think about whether they will need to separate pages later. They want the option without the obligation. The stapler grants this by making reversal possible but imperfect. Removing a staple costs time and leaves evidence. That small cost creates just enough friction to discourage casual disassembly while preserving flexibility. This balance explains why staplers did not replace clips entirely and why clips did not disappear after staplers arrived. Each tool encodes a different assumption about commitment. A paperclip says, "for now." A staple says, "probably." Neither says forever. The stapler's durability reinforces this philosophy. It is not designed for precision maintenance. It tolerates abuse. Staples jam, but the mechanism survives. Springs weaken slowly. Hinges loosen gradually. The tool remains functional long after elegance is gone. This matters in shared environments. Office tools are communal, and communal tools must survive neglect. The stapler expects to be dropped, slammed, overloaded, and ignored. Its internal parts are oversized relative to their task because reliability is more valuable than efficiency. Even the sound of a stapler is functional. The sharp metallic click provides confirmation without requiring visual attention. You don't need to check your work. The sound tells you it's done. In an environment full of noise, this particular sound cuts through because it is brief, percussive, and final. That finality is psychological, not structural. A stapled document feels complete even when it isn't. That feeling speeds work. It allows the brain to move on. The stapler doesn't just bind paper, it closes loops. This is why its basic form has remained unchanged for decades. Improvements exist: electric staplers, flat clinch designs, high-capacity models. But the core interaction persists because it aligns perfectly with human limitations. It reduces choice. It reduces aiming. It reduces thinking. The moment of realization often comes when you try to imagine a different solution that feels as natural. What if fastening required a sideways motion? What if it demanded alignment? What if it needed two hands or careful placement or visual confirmation? Each alternative adds friction. Each one asks more than people are willing to give. The stapler survives not because it is the strongest solution, but because it is the least demanding. And the most revealing insight appears when you consider what the stapler deliberately does not do. It does not promise permanence. Despite how final it feels, a staple is an agreement with uncertainty. It holds pages together, firmly enough to function and loosely enough to change. That middle ground is rare in physical objects. Most tools choose one side or the other. The stapler chose human behavior instead. Its success comes from accepting that work is provisional, attention is scarce, and decisions are rarely final. It doesn't enforce order. It enables momentum. In that way, the stapler is less about paper than about time. It shortens moments. It removes hesitation. It lets progress continue without demanding certainty. Good design often disappears by cooperating with how people already move. The stapler does not teach you how to use it. It meets you where you are, distracted, busy, and imperfect, and quietly makes that enough. That is why it still looks the way it does.